What's up, guys? I'm Ernie. I'm back with the Face Off Sports Network, and today I'm going to dive into some of my favorite Dynasty buy lows in all of fantasy football. So I got a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end for you guys to target. I'm going to help you try to win some of your leagues and get some value. So first guy I'm going to jump into with is Kenny Walker. I love Kenny Walker. I think this is the most underrated running back in all of the NFL. So Kenny's entering the third year of his career. He's only 24 years old. He has flashed immense upside in the past, right? But it always feels like injuries and some kind of timeshare has been holding him back. Um, and when you break it down, I can kind of back that up with if you average out his fantasy points per game last season, and you stretch it out over a 17 game season, he would have scored 280 PPR fantasy points, making him last year's RB7. So he would have finished higher than RBs like Kyron Williams, James Cook, Alvin Kamara, Chase Brown, James Conner, Jonathan Taylor, and Bucky Irving. And it's like, yeah, he got hurt, right? I understand that, but this is the NFL. And are the injuries a concern? Absolutely. But I do think Kenny could turn it around, and this could finally be the year he gives us a healthy year, right? Because if you stretch out those games that he played over a full season, he's an elite running back, you know? And he had a 91.2 PFF grade last year. That ranked him the third highest rusher in the entire NFL. So he absolutely possesses elite upside. I think people are a little bit scared, and down on him because the numbers weren't the sexiest. He has been a little bit injury prone, right? But there's a lot to like this year. Um, you know, Another flaw I forgot to add is that his passing game. So in the passing game, his first 2 years he didn't catch a lot of passes. That all changed last year with Ryan Grubb. In 11 games that he played, he was targeted 53 times, and he posted a 24% target per route run rate. That was tying him with top tier receiving backs like Bucky Irving. So expect to see more of the same in Clint Kubiak's system. And they have been beefing up their offensive line. They drafted Zabel, who is one of my favorite offensive linemen in the entire draft. I think he's definitely the best interior lineman in the draft. And they also drafted a 270-pound fullback from Alabama in the fifth. So Kubiak is gearing up to do what he does best and absolutely pound the ball. And I think he knows that he's got something with Walker. Um, you know, the Kubiak and his coaching tree, they're known for featuring running backs and their outside zone concepts. Kubiak's offense has produced RB1 and RB10 finishes, and they get a 12.7% target share. So if Kenny Walker stays healthy this year, you could bank on a massive breakout. He will easily finish top 10 in PPR. Take it to the bank. Second buy low we have on our list is Josh Downs. I think Josh Downs is one of the more overlooked wide receivers in all of fantasy football. I've been pounding the drum on these two guys a little bit, and I think that it's very warranted. So last year, Josh Downs, he quietly put together a highly efficient season. And that was with inconsistent quarterback play, which obviously limited his opportunities and upside. He finished with 72 receptions on 102 targets, 803 yards, and 5 touchdowns. But here's where it gets interesting. He gave an 85.1 PFF grade. That was 11th among all wide receivers in the NFL. Nobody would guess that, right? So that puts him in elite company. He had a 70% separation rate, which was sixth best in the NFL. So he's the sixth best separator in the entire National Football League. And these metrics really should jump at you considering he doesn't have a quarterback, or he didn't have a quarterback, right? So what happens when he does get somebody that could get him the ball? That's where I'm about to go to next. The real eye opener was when Joe Flacco had to step up as the starting quarterback, right? And then there was a 7-game stretch with Josh Downs and Joe Flacco. And let me read you his averages. So Josh Downs averaged 6.3 receptions, 68.6 yards per game, 10.9 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. That was the 7 games he played with Flacco. If you projected those numbers over a 17 game season, he would have finished with 107 receptions, 1,166 receiving yards, and 7 touchdowns. In PPR scoring, that translates to 266 fantasy points. That would have been wide receiver 8, putting him between Terry McLaurin and CD Lamb. This is the level of upside I'm talking about here, and this is why I'm banging the drum for Josh Downs. And now, actually, a lot of people will go, well, the quarterback play, it's Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. I get it. I completely get it. But, Anthony Richardson, a lot of people, including myself, we loved him last year on the upside because it's all very real. I think the rushing upside is still legit. It's just, I don't think Anthony's a really good thrower. I don't. And I'm hoping that Steichen, an offensive minded, coach that I absolutely love and is why I kind of like the Colts here, is hopefully he could pull out that capability within Anthony to be a more accurate passer. But they brought in Daniel Jones, and this is disgusting to say, but I think Daniel Jones wins this job, and I think he could play well. So again, Adam Schefter had one of the more interesting takes. He came out and said that, the the fan the NFL opinion on Daniel Jones is completely different than the consensus. There was a bidding war for him going on when he was a free agent this offseason. The Vikings and the Colts were like the two biggest names, but apparently there was a lot of more teams in on Daniel Jones. A lot of people like him. And again, I think we're starting to see a trend in the NFL where these good quarterbacks, Geno, Baker, Sam Darnold, ironically, two are from a New York team. And, I think that's the reason these New York teams, they kill quarterbacks, and the NFL, unfortunately, how it works is when your team, doesn't win and, your stats aren't the sexiest, nobody's going to point at your supporting cast. They're just going to say, oh, it's his fault. It's the quarterback's fault. Get rid of him. Right. And then you see these resurrection projects and everybody's left stunned. I think Daniel Jones didn't play the best, but I think there was a lot of uh, things that weren't his fault. I think, he was playing with an XFL offensive line. He had patchwork receivers, and now he goes to a really good situation. The Colts have an awesome offensive line. They have an awesome receiving room. They just drafted Tyler Warren. They have Jonathan Taylor, and Steichen was the mastermind back on the Eagles back in 2022. I believe he's the reason why they got to the Super Bowl that year because they didn't have this defense yet. And I think Steichen is a very underrated coach. OTAs are encouraging. Like, Anthony Richardson looks terrible. Daniel Jones looks awesome, right? So I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. We're just hoping that Daniel Jones comes in and with a good situation, he gives competent quarterback play. And if that happens, I think Josh Downs is in for a monster season. Danny is always favorited his slot receivers and tight ends. So I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Downs is his most targeted receiver when the year's over. And do not be surprised when Josh Downs puts in a top 20 PPR finish this year. I really do believe that's his upside. I think he's going to finish higher. And my last favorite buy low in Dynasty is Evan Engram. So Evan Engram is my favorite tight end buy low this year. And he was hurt last year, but the year prior, he saw 143 targets. That was third amongst tight ends. And he was 37 yards short of 1,000 yards. Now he's finally healthy. And he's entering Sean Payton's system as the Joker, right? With a blossoming Bo Nix. So this is an awesome situation to be in. Jimmy Graham in this same role over a 4-year window with Sean Payton averaged over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns every year. So again, Jimmy Graham, Evan Engram, they're both super athletic tight ends. And, I wouldn't be shocked if, this was Bo's guy this year. I think he might be the best overall value on the Broncos in fantasy football. Yes, RJ Harvey's going to go insane. I love RJ Harvey, right? But you're going to have to take RJ Harvey 4th, 5th, 6th round if you're lucky. Evan Engram, you're getting him, round 10 or later, right? And I think he possesses top five tight end upside this year. Peyton's scheme is perfect for athletic tight ends, especially in the red zone. So if you're in a PPR league, definitely buy Evan Engram. If you're in a tight end premium league, I think Evan Engram is a very big buy this year. He's only 30 years old. He's still younger than Kittle, right? So if Evan Engram, is healthy this year, which I believe he will be, I don't really think he's that injury prone. I think with Sean Payne and Bo Nix, this is the best situation he's ever been in his career. And again, tight ends, they're a little bit different than running back and wide receiver. You could see these guys play into, their early 30s. Like look at Kelsey. Kelsey is what, 34, and he finally fell off. So, these guys, you give them 31, 32, 33, and they could still be producing. So I think Evan Engram is a major buy right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he was their guy and he finished a top five PPR tight end this year. That's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for joining us. Definitely invest in these guys. Buy low. A lot of people, they'll give Josh Downs away for free right now. Kenny Walker, it depends on the owner. If, he thinks he's an injury prone guy, they're going to give him away for, very cheap too. And Evan Engram, man, I think, because of the down year and, I don't think people are connecting the dots with the landing spot and the opportunity. So feeling out, man, maybe you can get him for a third, which would be insane, a third round rookie pick in Dynasty, but definitely buy low, especially in tight end premiums, because you could flex him and he will slaughter. So, again, thanks for joining me, guys. Good luck in your leagues this year. Buy low on these guys.